Scott Presler, the man, the myth, the legend, the grassroots legend. Thank you for joining the show today. Where are you right now? You in Wisconsin?
I am. I'm in Green Bay in Brown County, Wisconsin.
How's the weather up there?
It's been snowing every single day. And it's March.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. So you are hard at work right now, fighting for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Give us a rundown of what the court looks like right now up there and the stakes of this election, because like we learned the hard way in Pennsylvania, just for people who are watching, where we didn't pay attention to, took for granted, call it whatever you want, the Supreme Court races in 2015 here in Pennsylvania. And we have been dealing with the fallout and the consequences of a 5-2 Democrat supermajority on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for almost a decade now. And so it gives me joy to see that you are focused on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So give us a breakdown. What's the makeup of the court and what are the stakes here?
I know, whoever thought a Wisconsin Supreme Court race could be so sexy, but let me break down the background for you and why everybody in the country, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, should be focusing on Wisconsin. So right now, we have a conservative court, meaning there are 4 conservatives and 3 liberals. However, one of those conservatives is retiring, meaning that the election on April 4th, if we are unsuccessful at electing Justice Daniel Kelly, that conservative court will quickly flip from conservative to liberal. And what's at stake in this election? Well, Justice Daniel Kelly's opponent, the liberal, has already indicated voter ID in Wisconsin will be gone. Proof of residency for voter registration will be gone. Gun rights and hunting rights will be attacked in the state of Wisconsin. And in addition to medical freedom, Democrat Governor Evers, like in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, shut down schools, churches, businesses, and he tried to declare a stay-at-home order. Do you know who was the deciding vote in Wisconsin that shut down Governor Evers' stay-at-home order? It was Justice Daniel Kelly in 2020. He has already proven conservative leadership. But the last most important thing, because I know there are so many people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that listen to you, Sean, that care about election integrity. I want to be overt in this messaging. The court in Wisconsin declared unmanned drop boxes as unconstitutional. And so if you care about election integrity, I'm here to tell you that if we are unsuccessful at winning with Justice Daniel Kelly on April 4th, there will be unmanned drop boxes on every street corner in Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Eau Claire, going into the all-important 2024 presidential election. So what happens on April 4th in Wisconsin is going to affect every single American going forward in whether or not we're able to win elections.
Man, Scott, you articulate the stakes so well. And so the people in Pennsylvania and people who are all around the country, really, who are watching this, you talk about these stakes, they're real. And what did that look like in the state of Pennsylvania after 2020, where, you know, the governor, when we passed this no excuse mail-in ballot program, which is called Act 77, the governor completely removed any sense of a deadline for those ballots. We had drop boxes everywhere. We took Zuckerbucks, which means we had private funds influencing public elections. They removed the ID process. They removed the signature verification process, all in the lead up to the 2020 race. And when we challenged that law and when we challenged the constitutionality of Act 77, now it's as clear as day that there are 4 ways where you can vote legally in accordance with the Pennsylvania state constitution in absentee, right? And it makes clear 4 very clear-cut ways. I mean, you need basically a 3rd or 4th grade reading level to understand this in the Pennsylvania state constitution. But because we have in the state of Pennsylvania a 5-2 Democrat supermajority on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, it doesn't matter. Like they don't interpret the Constitution in the same way that we conservatives do. They're not constitutional purists, right, Scott? So every single challenge, even though we had favorable rulings on the Commonwealth Court, every single challenge to Act 77, the unconstitutional no excuse absentee ballot, mail-in ballot program here in the state of Pennsylvania, every challenge was struck down at the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, regardless of what the Constitution says. And so you're 100% right. These races are so, so important. And in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, what blew me away, Scott, is that there's already been $30 million spent in that race. How is that possible?
And it's all coming from California. It's coming from New York. It's coming out of state for Justice Daniels' liberal opponent because they understand, just as we do, what's at stake. They know they're going to be able to get rid of voter ID and have drop boxes should they be victorious on April 4th. And that's why I'm trying to nationalize this election, and I'm screaming at the rooftops trying to get anyone that will listen to me about the importance of winning on April 4th.
You are. This is what I think is so great about you, Scott, is that you've been doing this for a long time, and you do a lot of the work. This is hard work. It's unsexy work. Somehow you've managed to make the Wisconsin Supreme Court race sexy, as you said. But these races for the longest time in our party, Scott, I mean, they're not races for president or U.S. Senate or governor. They're judicial races, off-cycle races. Do you think that our party as a whole, maybe certainly you do, and elements of the grassroots do, really, which, by the way, those are the door kickers. Those are the people who get the mission accomplished. But do you think the leadership in the more establishment inside the Beltway types, do you think they get this?
Maybe.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Well, I don't know how to answer that question because I'm trying so hard to be respectful because I am a team player.
Of course.
And I do believe in building the brand of the Republican Party. And at the end of the day, I'm going to vote for the Republican because the worst Republican is better than the best Democrat, period. I'm a brand builder. And it's difficult for me when we just have an RNC race where 90% of the base across the country of the Republican Party wanted change, wanted new leadership. And our party leaders didn't listen to us. They didn't listen to the very people that are the door knockers, are the phone callers, are the people that provide jobs for these people by donating to the party. And so it's very difficult for me. But at this point, I'm leaving all of that aside. My focus and priority is working as a team to make sure we're electing Justice Daniel Kelly to the Wisconsin Supreme Court on April 4th.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I very much appreciate the discipline on the messaging there. I mean, that is a hallmark of any successful activist, any successful candidate, any successful leader in the conservative movement, which of course you are, Scott. I want to back off of all of this, right? And I want to ask you, how did Scott Presler find him? How did you get into all this, Scott? And then the follow-on question to that is, how does it feel? Does it feel a little bit surreal to be, you've got 1.3 million people who follow you on Twitter, 1.3 million. So clearly you've become an influencer, more than just an influencer in this movement. You're one of the most influential grassroots activists in the country. And I'll tell you, anytime you come to Pennsylvania, it doesn't matter where it is. It's like, oh, Scott Presler's coming to town. This is awesome. This is great. How did you go from being just a kid watching from the sidelines to being one of the most influential people in the country?
Thank you. Well, a little bit of background on, I guess, who Scott Presler is. Well,
beyond just a guy with a great head of hair.
Yeah, it is the hair. That is part of the allure, my siren call. And my dad is a retired Navy captain, so I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. And my mom is a loving, supportive housewife. And I moved to Virginia when my dad was stationed up there working at the War College. And then he went on to work at the Department of Defense at the Pentagon. And so I started off as a dog walker after graduating from George Mason University with a degree in criminal justice. Couldn't find a job. This was after the President Obama years, so it was very difficult for me to find my place in society. And I worked at an elementary school to get my start. And when President Obama was reelected in 2012, it was that night of his reelection that I created my Twitter account because I was mad. But I wasn't just mad at President Obama. I pointed the finger back at myself and I said, Scott, where were you knocking on doors? Where were you registering voters? Where were you getting out the vote? And I realized that my inaction meant that I was a part of the problem, and that in order for me to be a part of the solution, I had to translate my anger into action. My first ever political job was moving to Texas, halfway across the country. I didn't know a soul there, and I worked to help elect now Governor Greg Abbott in the great state of Texas. Then, focusing on the White House, I never wanted Hillary Clinton to ever set foot in that White House. And so I moved back to Virginia and worked tirelessly with our friends in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, which delivered helping to elect Donald Trump as the 45th president of the United States of America. But my life, Sean, changed forever in 2019 when President Trump brought attention to the city of Baltimore, Maryland. And again, I was reminded of the inaction that I felt in 2012 when President Obama was reelected, because I saw that everybody on social media, they were posting about the trash of Baltimore. They were getting likes and retweets and clicks.
I remember.
But nobody was offering a hand to help the people. And I tweeted out, I'm going to the city of Baltimore. The tweet went viral across the country. And within 7 days, we organized a cleanup and we picked up 12 tons of trash in 12 hours in one day in the most dangerous streets of the country. And I thought to myself, wait a second. I'm not the government. I don't have millions of dollars at my disposal. I'm a private citizen with a Twitter account. And look at what I was able to accomplish. And I thought to myself, why don't we do this everywhere across the country? And we did. We went to Atlanta, Austin, Baltimore, Chicago, Denver, Duquesne, Detroit, Houston, Kenosha, Los Angeles, Miami, Milwaukee, Nashville, Portland, Pittsburgh, Philly. And I was protested for picking up trash on the streets of San Francisco, California.
Why? Why?
They called me a bigot.
What?
I was picking up trash and we were picking up needles and we were helping the homeless community. And we had people dressed in all black come up and say, "Go home, bigots." And so I shouted back at them because I couldn't be heard otherwise. And I said, "Will you help us pick up trash?" And spoiler alert, they didn't help us. But
Well, what about the cleaning up of trash? Like, how did you find I mean, I know you saw people talking about the devastation in Baltimore. It's a city that it's been through the ringer for a real long time. I mean, I think it's been under Democrat leadership for the better part of 60 years now, right?
Yeah.
Everything about you, Scott, speaks to something near and dear to my heart, which is deeds and not words. You know, and that was like one of the mottos of one of the units in the military that we served. Like, watch what people do, not what people say. And one of the things as a political outsider, when I ran for office in 2020, like, I had no political experience. Just like you, like I had sort of been watching from the sidelines. I've always been tangentially involved, whether it was advising members of the House or the Senate or advocating for good policies as it pertains to veterans or national security stuff, whatever. But in politics, there are a lot of people that have basically there are a lot of good idea fairies, you know, but very few people who are willing to do the work. So how did you make that connection? Did you see something happen in Baltimore and just say a lot of talking, but not a whole lot of action, and you just felt like you needed to do something? Like, where did that come from in you?
Well, President Trump was retweeting Kim Klasik's videos of the devastation. And I just thought to myself, why isn't anybody doing anything? Just do something. And, you know, my dad's a retired Navy captain. I'm an Eagle Scout. So I've lived a life of seeing others serve their country. And I thought, well, I'm not serving in our United States military, but maybe I can serve in a very different capacity. And I just took up the mantle and said, why can't I? And more importantly, I will. And when I found out that we could do it, it just transformed into, let's do it everywhere. Let's help people. And let's use the platform that we have to do good.
I mean, it's an amazing life lesson for anybody who's watching, really. Is there, like I said, a lot of people talk, lots of great ideas, but very little action in this world. I mean, can you imagine if the Republican Party, Scott, had 1,000 of you? Do you think that we would ever lose elections?
Oh my gosh. I think that we would transform this country for the better in a more positive vision.
I mean, I agree. I agree. I mean, how do you, so you talked about the influence of your father being in the Navy and your mom being a stay-at-home mom. How have they influenced you in all of this? And I'll tell you this, I bet you that I think that they'd probably be proud of you.
They are. I was just on the phone with my mom this morning, telling her some good news. We're very close. You know, I really hit the jackpot. My mom and dad, still to this day, they've been married, I believe, for 41 years. Don't hurt me, mom and dad, if I got that incorrect. And they share true love. My dad still calls my ma his bride, which I think that's the most adorable thing. And I love that they were always there for me and my family. And still to this day, my dad, every time I have to fly somewhere, he'll always take me to the airport. He'll pick me up. My ma, even though I'm an adult, she'll be like, "Let me do your laundry." So I got so lucky. I live in a loving household that supports the work that I do, and my mom and dad told me they believe I'm helping to save the country. So I'm grateful.
I mean, there's no question about that, right? And like one of the most important, I mean, I'll speak for you, but it seems like that one of the most important components, or at least the central focus of so much of what you do is election integrity. And obviously there are different laws in every state. But where do you think that our party has to go from here to make the biggest impact with regards to securing our elections, both in this off cycle in Wisconsin and moving forward?
Well, it's a lot of things. To start, we can't have election integrity and we can't have people vote unless they are registered voters. And so number one is we must have a robust voter registration operation. And that's why every single week, and yes, I see you retweet me every single week when I post the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania numbers, because we consistently are beating the Democrats. We're outperforming them and getting people to either register as a Republican or change their party affiliation from Democrat to Republican. And we're making big gains, especially. It's my contention that in the next 5 to 10 years, I believe Southwest Pennsylvania will be bright ruby red. I mean, we're seeing Fayette and Crawford and Butler and Beaver and Erie and Allegheny. We're getting all of those counties which are slowly but surely moving to the right. And we're even making inroads in Philadelphia, of all places, Delaware, Lehigh, Scranton. And so we must continue to register voters at their current location. Now, some people may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to be honest with you. And I want you to lend your ear to me for a moment, please. It's my contention that if Republicans don't have an all-of-the-above approach to voting going into 2023 and beyond, into the presidential election in 2024, we're simply not going to be successful, and we're going to be doomed to continue failing and losing elections. And what I mean by that is, yes, we're voting on Election Day, but we must also engage in early voting, early in-person voting, mail-in voting, absentee voting, and where legal, ballot harvesting. And that's why on January 23rd of this year, I launched a super PAC called Early Vote Action, earlyvoteaction.com. I'm focused on 5 key states: Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. If we are able to win those 5 states, we win the presidency in 2024.
I mean, it's so true. And you talk specifically with regards to Pennsylvania. The Democrats have like a 400,000+ voter registration advantage, as you mentioned.
Correct.
Republicans are chipping away at it every day. But what frustrates me is, you know, our party here in the state of Pennsylvania, and I will say this, not you, but, you know, we're spending 6 figures still trying to figure out how to win and develop an early voting program, a mail-in ballot program. I mean, but the first phase of that operation, you said it has to be focused on voter registration, right? We have to close that window in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, look, the bottom line is Democrats statewide in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can win without a single Republican vote. That gives them an enormous advantage, especially when it comes to early voting. With, you look at John Fetterman as a perfect example, right, Scott, where by the time he walked on that debate stage, Democrats had a grassroots operation in the state of Pennsylvania where he had 500,000 or something like that, something insane, an early vote advantage over Dr. Oz. That's simply not sustainable. And so if we can fix that, like focus on closing that window and then have an early mail-in ballot, early vote program where you're focusing on low propensity voters. And who I mean by that, like target the people that only President Donald Trump could bring out. That guy brought out the craziest cross-section of voters in the state of Pennsylvania. People that had never voted in their entire life turned out in 2016 and then again in 2020 to vote for President Trump. We need to find and identify who those people were, by and large, who stay home during these off-cycle races and stayed home during the Oz-Fetterman race. Like, we need to get them a ballot like every single cycle, make sure that they're voting to give ourselves a floor. And ultimately, like you said, if we don't do this, like we're going to continue to we're going to lose these states, Scott.
Well, and I'd like to touch on a few things and speak directly to the viewer and listener at home. I am a huge proponent of election integrity. I've been fighting for this since the 2020 presidential election, trying to pass laws across the country. And I want to be overt by saying I don't agree with what the Democrats are doing with all their tools. But right now, many of those tools are currently legal. And I'm saying, for example, ballot harvesting in Nevada and California, that is currently legal. And I understand when people say they want one day, one vote, one paper ballot. The unfortunate nature of our circumstance is we currently are not going to be able to do so with Democrat governors in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And so the strategy is we can only provide for layers of election integrity if we win. So use an all of the above approach to voting in order to win and then yield that power, harness that power to then, once we're in power, provide for layers of election integrity. Now, very briefly, a couple reasons why people should vote early and why it is so critical for Republicans to win elections. Number one, look at the great state 48 in Arizona. We told the Democrats where we were throwing the football. We told them we were voting on one day. What happened on one day? 30% of machines coincidentally went down and thousands of Republicans were disenfranchised. Had we engaged in mail-in voting, had we engaged in early voting, I believe Kari Lake would be governor of the great state 48 today. Number two, you hit the nail on the head in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. By the time that Dr. Oz and John Fetterman had their first and only debate, 500,000 Pennsylvanians already voted, already cast their ballots. And even worse, 4 out of 5 of those voters were registered Democrats. What does that mean? That means that 400,000 Democrats have already voted, meaning that they are narrowing the focus and scope of people that they have to reach out to, so they have more time, money, and resources to contact people that haven't voted, while Republicans, we're all waiting to vote on one day, right? Meaning that we have less time, fewer resources, and everybody to reach out to in order to make sure that they're voting in 13 hours, while the Democrats are voting for 60 days, 2 months. It's an unlevel playing field. And last, people make fun of me, but y'all, it's been snowing every day here in Wisconsin. And do you know what happened on Election Day in Nevada in 2022? It snowed in Washoe County in Reno, where the Republican people, our mountain folk, like to live. And Adam Laxalt, running for Senate, lost by 8,000 votes. Do you know how many Republicans stayed home on Election Day in 2022? 150,000 Republicans stayed home. It's my contention that Nevada is not a purple or blue state. It's a red state. We don't have a voter problem. We have a voter turnout problem. And if we engaged in early in-person voting, early voting, mail-in voting, absentee voting, and legal ballot harvesting, we will have a much more level playing field and the ability to win elections going into 2023 and beyond.
God, Scott, what a great point. Having run 2 elections myself, of course, it dawned on me that, the more early votes you can bank, the more surgical focus, I guess, you can bring to the fight. You can focus. Okay, look, like it's a matter of looking at a spreadsheet, right? Like, okay, we've got these people have already voted. Let's make sure that this group of people over here, let's make sure they get to the polls. And what Republicans do for the longest time is they focus on running great campaigns, and oftentimes, sometimes Republicans by and large, like, they've got solid volunteers, they've got great people like you on our side who are all about, they believe in the country, they love the country, they love the Constitution. But you're right, they're just showing up on election day, and there's not enough focus on elections. And I feel like in order to run a great campaign moving forward, Republicans have to focus on both, one, running campaigns, of course, and two, on election law and the actual focus on the game of elections, which is, of course, it's now become with early voting and mail-in voting. And when you describe it like that, it feels like our party, especially in these critical swing states, are way behind the power curve, Scott.
Well, part of it too, Sean, is it's psychological. And what I mean by that is I always bring people's attention back to 2016 in Florida and Ohio, because the Democrats were pushing early voting hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember all of the pundits and pollsters, they were saying, Hillary Clinton, insurmountable early vote lead. Republicans and Donald Trump can't possibly win because Florida and Ohio are going for Hillary. How many people didn't vote because they had in their head that it was baked in for Hillary Clinton, or that we couldn't win Florida and Ohio? Yes, we did, but how many people were disenfranchised because they listened to the media? And where I'm going with this is I want to bring it back to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I'll never forget March 2018, Rick Saccone versus Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District. I remember that Connor Lamb was bringing in so much money from outside of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I remember all of the pundits saying, Connor Lamb, double-digit lead over Rick Saccone. Do you know what happened on Election Day? Rick Saccone lost by 627 votes. How many people didn't vote because they thought that it was in the bag for Connor Lamb? How many people didn't donate, didn't send a text message, didn't knock on a door, didn't write a letter, didn't make a phone call because they thought it was baked in for Connor Lamb? And so I want everybody to treat every election as winnable, critical, and important. Because had we done just a little bit more work, then we could have had Congressman Rick Saccone, and we would have never had the Connor Lamb trying to run for a higher office in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, I guess it's not, yes, you're 100% right. And I wonder, like, are Republicans, do we listen too much to the media? Because you talked about the media's role in the sort of influence operation that they have over the psyche of the American people. And I think to a certain extent from 2018 until now, that stranglehold on the American mind has loosened up a little bit, but are we listening too much to the media?
Well, we are. However, I argue that it worked in our favor in 2022 because the media had to accurately report that for the first time in history, did you know that Republicans led in early in-person voting and mail-in voting in the state of Florida? That has never happened ever. We were winning early voting in Miami-Dade. We were doing great in Duval, Jacksonville, Clearwater, Pinellas County, Florida, Seminole, Florida. We were winning in areas of the state that are traditionally purple, if not blue. And because of that, I argue that the psychological effect actually worked on the contrary. And Democrats were going, oh my gosh, Charlie Crist can't win. Ron DeSantis is going to win. And so if we have a robust early voting strategy going into 2024, that psychological effect is going to work in our favor.
Wow. That's a great point. You think we can turn it around fast enough?
I do. And that's why we're building the infrastructure right here, right now.
So what can people do, Scott? What can people do who are watching this? What can we do to help you? You said you have a super PAC, right? Tell us about it.
Well, I launched Early Vote Action, earlyvoteaction.com. And again, we're focused on Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. However, we're also building sister cities. And what I mean by that is there are areas of the country that are so blue or so red that they often get overlooked or underlooked. For example, 1 million people voted for President Donald Trump out of Los Angeles County. You wouldn't think it, but California has more registered Republicans than anywhere in the entire country. Why are we not utilizing those underutilized Republicans? So, for example, Los Angeles can partner with Orange County to make sure Orange County flips red, or partner with Arizona, Nevada. Chicago can partner with Wisconsin. Tennessee, which is blood red, can partner with North Carolina. And the great states of New York, Delaware, and Maryland can help focus on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to flip that state red. And so we're going to be partnering with people across the country, focusing on those 5 key states to make sure that we are victorious in 2024.
God, Scott, that is so smart. I mean, I have to ask, I've got to ask you, so much of what you're doing, we talked about it. This is really, really difficult work. Like registering, people don't realize how difficult it is to register a voter. It's almost more difficult than, well, it definitely is more difficult than convincing someone to vote for you. You're convincing someone when you're trying to convince them to register about buying into an ideology that reflects their belief system as it pertains to a country or the direction of our country. And it's really, really difficult, man. I mean, like a good day, if you have somebody who's out registering voters, a good day of registering voters, like 3 to 5 voters, and so a lot of people, I mean, what I'm getting to, Scott, is that a lot of people say, well, that's just too hard. Like, I'm not going to do that. And it's unsexy and it's difficult. And you're also out there knocking doors and you're out there, getting signatures and doing all the stuff that are the lifeblood of a successful campaign. Right. And how do you inspire people to join your cause? Because there are volunteers and grassroots activists who are watching this that are trying to replicate exactly what you're doing. So much of what you're doing, I mean, you're a leader, right? And you're inspiring action in the people that follow you. How can people replicate what you're doing?
Well, number one, in order for us to be successful, we have to meet people where we are. We have to find the issue that is most important to the voter, and that's how we're going to win them over. So whether it's school choice or medical freedom, election integrity, backing the blue, whatever their issue is, we have to meet them where they are. And that's why we did, for example, gas station voter registration, because we were meeting them at the gas pump when they were seeing that it was upwards of $100 to fill up their tank, thanks to President Biden,
So
nixing
smart.
the Keystone Pipeline on day number 1. And we've been able to flip, for example, in Nassau County, a blue county that voted for Joe Biden, which flipped red in 2022. And we were getting people to switch from Democrat to Republican literally at the gas pump. So let's go to supermarkets. Let's go to flea markets and food markets. And let's go to gun shops and gun shows. You can go to gunshowtrader.com. And every single gun show for the entire United States, for all 50 states, is on that website. Call up the individual vendor. Hey, my name's Sean Parnell. I would like permission to register voters at your gun show. I'm not going to be pushing politics. I'm simply going to be registering people to vote so they have a voice in the next election. Boom. Who's going to be going to a gun show? Literally, no pun intended. They're going to be your 2A Second Amendment voters. Why do we not have volunteers there doing volunteer recruitment and voter registration switching? But here's my promise. My promise is to any viewer at home that's watching this, especially in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. If you go to my Twitter, at Scott Presler, SCOTTPRESLER, and slide into my DMs in the most wholesome of manner, I will provide for you a voter registration toolkit that teaches you the who, what, when, where, why of voter registration, and how easy it is to make sure that we are closing that gap in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Man, Scott, your enthusiasm is contagious, and keep doing what you're doing. You are a patriot. You're a warrior, and this country is so blessed and lucky to have somebody like you. And so is our conservative movement and the Republican Party. I hope they take notice. I know that they're noticing what you're doing, and just keep doing it because it makes a difference. And again, we're lucky to have you. This movement is lucky to have you.
Thank you, Sean. And people are grateful for you, and thank you for running for office, and thank you for your service to our country and your continued service to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I also want to give a shout out to Chairman Sam DeMarco.
Oh, my man.
He's doing great work in Allegheny County. And so if any of you are listening and you're in Southwest PA, I urge and encourage you to join your local Republican Party, even if you're disillusioned with it. But know that we do have leaders like Sam that are going to welcome the grassroots, welcome you into the party, and make sure that we are working together to not only win the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court seat this November, that we have the opportunity to flip from blue to red, which would give the Democrats only a 4-3 narrow majority on the court, which would be huge, but it will set us up for victory in 2024.
We've got to win, and you're absolutely right. Sam DeMarco is a great patriot. And by the way, Allegheny County, most populous Republican county in the entire state. It typically goes for Democrats, but Sam he does a real good job, outnumbered by Democrats 2-1, and Allegheny County is such a critically important county, and so totally agree with you. Sam's a great patriot. You're a great patriot too, Scott. Anytime you need anything from me, you've got my cell phone number. You call or text me, and anytime you want to come on Battleground and talk to the people of Pennsylvania, you let me know.
Thank you. I've been aching to get on this show with you, so thank you for having me. And I'm so looking forward to returning to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in early April. I'll be hitting Delaware County, Scranton, Lehigh, Bucks. And then in early May, I'll be coming to Southwest Pennsylvania, and I'll be sure to hit you up when I come to town.
You are a machine, Scott Presler, a machine with great hair. So thank you for thanks for what you're doing. You're awesome, Scott. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless this great country that we call home.
Thank you, sir.